Hey everybody, Dave here with a part 2 video for my GM overview of the Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Adventure Path. As always, a few little disclaimers before we begin. This is going to be full of spoilers, so if you're a player, please stop watching now. You'll only be ruining the fun for yourself and potentially the other folks at your table. And if you haven't watched part 1 of my GM overview of this adventure path, I recommend you go watch that first before getting into this video. That video goes over the basic storyline and some of the themes of the campaign, whereas this video I will be going deeper into spoilers. I'll be sharing my own personal opinion about the adventure path, and also will be answering a few questions that were submitted in the comment section of the previous video. So with all of that out of the way, I suppose I should begin just by sharing my general thoughts about Fists of the Ruby Phoenix. Overall, I like it. I should say that I am a fan of everything that this campaign is sort of inspired by. I love, Kung Fu movies, Bruce Lee. I love Mortal Kombat and fighting games. I love Final Fantasy. I love Dragon Ball. I like everything that served as inspiration for this adventure path and campaign are things that I am a fan of outside of Pathfinder. So those elements I found appealing. I would say that I don't have any major concerns. There's no major red flags that would prevent me from running this campaign or playing it. But I did feel that the villain, who I didn't really talk about in the first video, I'll talk about it at length coming up, Syndara the Sculptor, is a character that I didn't see a lot of connection between the villain and the players. Mostly this is a revenge story. It's Syndara in the past was very much wronged, or I guess it's subjective whether or not he was wrong, but he has a bit of a history with Hao Jin, the Ruby Phoenix, and he's looking for payback by any means necessary. And his backstory and his history are things that I had difficulty figuring out, exactly how are the players going to have a connection to this villain. There's a lot of ways that the players will build connections with the other teams in the fighting tournament, especially one team that is actually sponsored by Syndara, the major villain, so they're a team of antagonists for the players as well. But as far as really having a connection to the villain, it was tenuous at best from what I saw reading the adventure. I should probably restate that I have not played this campaign, I've not GM'd it, so I'm giving you only my insights from having read through the 3 books of the adventure path. And so like when the major villain finally makes his appearance, there is kind of a exposition dump, I think, to kind of say, at long last we meet. I am Syndara the Sculptor. I'm the big villain, and I am determined to get vengeance upon the Ruby Phoenix and all that. And that's deep. I believe that is deep into book 3 when that happens. So I don't know. I think, comparing that to something like Abomination Vaults, where the players start getting hints of who the ultimate villain is very early, and like the story of Belcora is a famous story in the town of Otari and the surrounding areas, and even in Absalom, and so you're laying in that adventure path, you're laying the groundwork for the ultimate confrontation, like right from the beginning. In this one is not like that. And also a lot of this campaign is a sequel to both a first edition standalone adventure called the Ruby Phoenix Tournament, and it's also a sequel to several Pathfinder Society adventures from first edition. I have not read those. I did not participate in Society. So there's a lot of history for the character of Hal Jin. It's very apparent that she is a prominent figure, especially in Society play, and very little of that seems to be made apparent in this campaign. So again, if as a GM, I feel like I don't have the whole story about Hal Jin. And therefore, if I don't have the whole story, I can't communicate the whole story to the players. So therefore, motivation in this campaign is strictly on them to want to compete in a tournament and prove themselves as the best. And then towards the end, their motivation is largely altruistic. It is they want to they want to defend the town of Goka from a major calamity, and they want to get the person responsible. It just feels a little tenuous, but there are ways to work around that. So so I guess let's just get into some of the spoiler bits that I omitted from the first video. The first of those, well, I guess both of the major events, you really need to understand the Ruby Phoenix, and you need to understand Syndara. So Hal Jin, the Ruby Phoenix, is a hundreds of years old, great and powerful sorcerer who has the unusual ability or power of self-resurrection. She is a devout follower of Abadar and sort of committed herself to wanting to create a version of Abadar's Grand Vault. Is it the Grand Vault or the First Vault? I forget. But wanted to create a mortal version of that, of Abadar's vault of her own. And so she adventured for many, many, many years and committed herself to collecting items that were either rare or powerful or just works of beauty that she would put away in this vault in the name of Abadar. One of well, during her journeys, she met a young man named Syndara, the Sculptor, whose trade was crafting Demiplanes. And she struck up a relationship with Syndara. She became Syndara's pupil. He taught her the art of crafting Demiplanes. And once she sort of mastered that art of crafting Demiplanes, she created a grand tapestry. Hal Jin's tapestry, I believe, is the full proper name of it. But this tapestry is a gateway to her own private demiplane. And within that demiplane, she basically captured or stole, however you want to view it, whole cities, communities, mountains, islands, just like anything that she saw of value or works of beauty from the material plane that wouldn't fit in a vault, she pulled out of the material plane and put into this demiplane that's accessed through her magical tapestry. And some of it was, I don't want to make her sound completely selfish. There are some passages that say, like, yeah, she may have taken a whole village of people and put them in the tapestry, but that village was about to be destroyed by a volcano. So it was either watch them all die or whisk them away into the tapestry where they could continue surviving in her own private demiplane. Now, during this time, where she's working with Syndara, she became more and more and more proficient at building demiplanes, and that made Syndara very jealous. A lot of Syndara's clients who used to come to him and say, hey, would you make a beautiful demiplane for me and my church or what have you, were now going to Hal Jin for those services. And Syndara just basically started working for whoever would be willing to hire him. And that largely meant working for evil organizations that Hal Jin would have nothing to do with. So, like, he would create entire dimensions, demiplanes, that are are designed to torture people. And this drove a massive rift between Hal Jin and Syndara. So one of the Demiplanes that Syndara was building was called the Glass Lighthouse. Syndara and Hal Jin had a battle. At the end of the battle, Hal Jin absorbed the Glass Lighthouse Demiplane into her tapestry, and that became part of her Demiplane accessed in the tapestry all to itself. And her opponent, Syndara, the Sculptor, was inside the Glass Lighthouse when this happened. Syndara is an axiomite, so he is an immortal being. And this is where things get real fuzzy. What I know from the works in the 3 books is that Hal Jin had to sacrifice her memories. It doesn't really go into the hows or the whys or to whom, but I believe that in the Pathfinder Society play, there was a trial for Hal Jin. And at the end of the trial, I think she was found guilty of crimes, and part of her punishment was having to sacrifice all of her memories of the Demiplane that's attached to her tapestry, which means she forgot really all about Syndara and the Glass Lighthouse, and that Syndara is trapped in the Glass Lighthouse that is trapped inside of her tapestry. And long story short, if that's possible at this point, time moves 1/1000th of the pace in the tapestry in the Glass Lighthouse as it does in the real world. So for every year that passed in the real world, 1,000 years passed in the Glass Lighthouse for Syndara being trapped there and immortal, unable to die and unable to escape. 300 years have passed since that event in the real world, which means 300,000 years have passed for Syndara. 10 years ago, in the events of Pathfinder 1st Edition, a group of Pathfinders won the Ruby Phoenix tournament, and at the end of winning the Ruby Phoenix tournament, the prize is you can choose any one item from Hal Jin's vault. They chose that tapestry. And once the tapestry was removed from the vault, I don't know, it doesn't really the books don't really go into the mechanics of how it worked, but everything that was trapped in the vault, in the tapestry, started to come back into the real world, and that process freed Syndara from his prison within the tapestry, and now he is hell-bent on getting his vengeance on Hal Jin, the Ruby Phoenix. So that's a lot of backstory. And that's a lot of backstory that the players, the way it's written, let me know in the comments, because I may have missed something, but I didn't really see an avenue for the players to really learn that. So it's going to be on the GM to make sure that early on, from the get-go, players are learning about the history of Hal Jin and the tapestry. I'm not really sure how they would learn about Syndara or the Glass Lighthouse, considering I think the only person who knew about them was Hal Jin, and the whole reason why he was trapped there for 300,000 years is because she forgot about him. The book's pretty clear. Like if she was able to remember that he was trapped there, she would have gone back and freed him, and tried to mend the rift between them or do something, and not just leave him immortally imprisoned for over 300,000 years. So again, we have this hurdle of how do the players feel connection to Syndara, and this is not an act of vengeance he has against them. They're just bystanders in this feud he has with Hal Jin. So that feud and his release kind of brings us to the second major item that I omitted from my first video for spoilers, and that is the major cataclysmic event that happens in the city of Goka at the end of Book 2. Part of his plan to enact his vengeance upon Hal Jin and the Ruby Phoenix tournament was he found an egg that was laid by Mogaru, the final king. Mogaru is a kaiju. He is essentially Pathfinder's version of Godzilla. Terrifyingly powerful being, to the point that he doesn't have a stat block. He kind of transcends stats and mechanics as the books are aware, and he is more represented just by the hazards he causes when he rampages through a town. And these are very, very, very high level hazards that do a lot of damage. So Syndara found an egg that was laid by Mogaru and opened a magical portal in the sea that had, the egg on one side and kind of lured Mogaru through the portal, and released him and his fury on the city of Goka. And that occurs right after the final round of the Ruby Phoenix tournament and just before Hao Jin awards the players, presumably, as the champions of the tournament. So that's the fallout at the end of book 2, is trying to just, you can't fight Godzilla or Mogaru, the final king. You sort of mitigate the damage, and in the adventure, there was, in addition to the egg, there was a powerful bard who was playing a dirge, and that song was also drawing Mogaru into the city. So most of it is the players trying to it plays out like a chase scene where they're trying to get the bard who's playing the dirge and defeat that bard and stop the dirge from playing, and therefore convincing Mogaru to stop his trampling on the city. In the aftermath of that, Hao Jin disappears, and the two teams that the players have the most connection with also disappear, and they've all been taken to the Demiplane where the Glass Lighthouse resides, where Syndara resides, and that's when the players have to go collect the components for a ritual to summon a celestial dragon that will grant them one wish. Their one wish is to send us to the dimension with the Glass Lighthouse so that they can rescue Hao Jin and possibly one or both of the teams that were also captured. I think by just strictly by the way it's written, there's opportunity for more motivation. One suggestion is one of the teams that is captured is called Tento's Toughest, is the name of the team. They're very much presented in the campaign as both like the underdog team, the scrappy underdogs, least likely to win the tournament, but also they're a bunch of, good friendly people that the players team are more or less meant to bond with over the tournament, not just strictly think of them as enemies to be beaten in a ring in a tournament, but they're a friendly team. So part of the motivation might be, these are our friends, let's go save them from whoever it was that summoned Mogaru and captured the Ruby Phoenix, because at that point, I don't think they even know they've heard the name Syndara. One suggestion is make that bond between them and Tento's Toughest as strong as possible. And I think an easy way to do that is conjure some way that maybe one of the members of that team is a relative of one of the players. This might even call for adding another member to their team, which is kind of perfect if you have a team, if you've got like 5 players, then just like add another member to Tento's Toughest and make that person someone who has a strong connection to one of your players. That gives even more motivation for them to try to rescue them in book 3. So that's really one of my my big areas of concern with this is motivation, and largely the players not having a strong connection directly with the major villain and kind of feeling potentially like they're just pawns or bystanders in a battle that's really between Hao Jin and Syndara. And they may not have a very strong connection to, or direct connection to Hal Jin by that point either. The other concern I have, and this is more of a minor concern, is some of the adventure kind of feels like it's been drawn out, not for the sake of the narrative, but for the sake of Paizo has to put out one of these adventures every single month, and they have to be so long and cover so many levels of experience that it's just kind of, they have to do it. So, for example, one of the reasons why I don't particularly like the 6-book adventure paths is because so many of them feel like they have long stretches of the adventure, do nothing to really move the narrative forward. It's just, we have to take 3 books worth of narrative and stretch it out to 6 books. So we've got to cram in pockets of just other stuff to take up time, take up page space, award levels of experience and treasure, and that sort of thing, and not really moving forward the narrative any. If you really want to see how I feel about this stuff, make sure you check out my overview of the Age of Asters campaign, because that's one of the ones I really felt like had a lot of padding in it. I wouldn't say at all that there's a lot of padding in Ruby Phoenix, but to say, like, this is basically 9-10 levels of experience that's devoted to a martial arts tournament. Half of an entire person's life as an adventurer, and is the second half, where they're the most powerful, is devoted to a martial arts tournament. Now, technically, the martial arts tournament is interrupted at the end of Book 2 when Mogaru, the kaiju, is unleashed. So it's not that full breadth, but still, like, at 5-6 levels, maybe more than that, are dedicated to a martial arts tournament. And just on paper, that just seems like a lot of time. Now, that's divided really into 3 distinct sections. Book 1 is all about the pre-qualifying tournament. That's kind of its own adventure on the side. And then Book 2, you have a section that is the players having to woo a sponsor from a local patron in the city of Goka, and then the actual Ruby Phoenix tournament itself. The area that felt like it might be padding to me was trying to woo a sponsor. I felt like that was probably something that could have been handled in one session, that was kind of artificially stretched out to provide more experience, to provide another level, to take up page space in the second book, because they, Paizo knows that they are obligated to put out one of these adventure books every month, and they got to be so many pages and cover 3 levels of experience and so on and so forth. I think if I was doing this, I might find a way to abbreviate that section, and then just, you do something nice, you get your sponsor, and we move right on to the Ruby Phoenix tournament and just kind of keep the ball rolling. But again, I have not played this, I've not GM'd this, so please let me know in the comments if you have experienced this, and did it feel like any of the campaign, or especially that portion, was particularly padded out. So let's now move on to a couple of concerns that came up in the questions, or the comments section of the first video. And also, I did some just like looking around the official forums and Reddit to see what other people were feeling about the adventure path. There's really only one area that people express real concerns with, and that is in Book 1, which is the qualifying tournament. It's a 3-day period where there is a lot of combat each day as the players are trying to get their 10 feathers for their necklace, and they cleaned out their assigned location on the island. And the problem is, players are going to be having to do multiple encounters in each of these 3 days, potentially, and that means lost hit points, it means lost spell slots, it means they're wearing down. but the enemies and the adventurers, their stat blocks don't really reflect that they've been having to go through the same trials, that they've been losing hit points, that they've been losing exhausting spell slots, and so forth. So how do you manage that? And the book has very general advice. It's, if you think that the opponents are going to be too tough for players, then consider lowering their hit points, or removing some spell slots, or applying the weak, I want to call it the weak template, but it's not called a template in 2nd edition, but the creature adjustment rules. Either using the weak creature adjustment rules on opponents, or if you feel like vice versa, the players are going to steamroll and you can apply the elite creature adjustments to them. But a lot of people online felt like there wasn't enough finite guidance to help them manage those situations. As always, I recommend you check out the official forums. There's a special board that's dedicated to each adventure path, and stickied at the top of each of those are special GM-focused threads that talk about issues like this and ways people deal with them. So some thoughts about that. First of all, it's okay for players to lose a match. They will have as long as they don't lose their last feather, they're still in the competition, and they can still engage with other teams and wager and try to come back. One loss, unless they lose all of their feathers, should not be viewed as a terminal event. In fact, it looked like online a lot of people thought that having one team just steamroll them in early on was great, because then when they meet in book 2 and they meet in the championship, then they there's more investment in having that second round with the team that steamrolled them back on the island. Also, because this seems like it might be more of a challenge for magic using characters because they're losing spell slots than martial characters, you might want to consider the free archetype variant rule and allow everybody to take a free archetype, and maybe encourage the spellcasters that it wouldn't be a horrible idea to use that archetype to give them more martial prowess, so that they are able to function at a higher level when they have exhausted all of their spell slots, because that is something that's probably going to happen in book 1. Now, the other side of this argument also came up with a lot of games saying, you know, my players earned all 10 of their feathers on day 1, and then felt like, well, there's really nothing else for us to do. We're just going to sit around and twiddle our thumbs for the next 2 days until we move on to the next round, because we've already won. We've already got our 10 feathers. And a quick reminder that it's not when you get your 10 feathers you win. You have to keep those 10 feathers. It's when the tournament ends after 3 days, those teams with the 10 feathers move on to the second round. So if your players do get all 10 feathers on the first day, that means on day 2 and 3, every other team is going to be looking at them saying, hey, they've got 10 feathers. Let's go challenge them and try to take some of their feathers. So it's not just about getting the feathers, it's about keeping the feathers until the end of the qualifying tournament. Another point that came up a couple of times was that there are a lot of player groups out there who kind of look for the path of least resistance. And a lot of, even though I feel like the rules of the tournament are pretty clearly spelled out, there's a lot of people out there who said that, you know, their players are questioning things like, if you decline a challenge, you're eliminated from the tournament, but it doesn't say how long you have before you have to accept the challenge. So there are players who take their 8-hour rest and then accept the challenge. My personal opinion is that's probably not the intent of the rules. I think it's supposed to be like, we challenge you, you tell us yes or no right now. And there's other things like, you know, hey, I think one person was online was saying, my players used Animate Dead to summon zombies and herded them towards another team to kill that team, or weaken that team, and then challenge them. Or have the zombies kill that, or, you know, attack that team when that team is at their weakest right after a challenge, and kill that team. And there's debates over whether or not you're allowed to loot your opponents. You're clearly not allowed to loot anybody that you defeat in the tournament proper. That's forbidden. But if you just happen to find dead bodies out on the island, you just happen on them, can you loot those bodies? Long story short, there seems like there's a type of player who likes to try to bend the rules and find the easiest way through. This is not an adventure, in my opinion, for those people. The Ruby Phoenix tournament is designed to find the people who are most capable of dealing with great challenges, with most martial prowess and great wit. And I don't think that rule benders are who they want in their tournament. And those people probably would have been weeded out and not invited to the tournament. So just FYI, if you've got a group of players who you think are going to try to circumvent the rules and bend the rules and so on, you know, there might be other adventure paths out there that will lead to fewer headaches for you as the GM than this one. And the last question that came up a lot of times was about connecting this adventure path to other adventure paths, specifically connecting it to Abomination Vaults. And questions, do I think that's a good idea, and how do I think that would work? Yeah, I think that's a fine idea. Like, you know, the themes are radically different. A dungeon crawl to a competition tournament, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't connect them. There are conversations about, you know, geography is, you know, Tianshaw's far away from Otari and so on and so forth, but it seems pretty clear that the Ruby Phoenix, Hao Jin, has great power, and she's handpicking and inviting 32 teams to her tournament. I don't think it's beyond a reason that she would be able to know what happened in the events of Abomination Vaults. She is aware that these heroes overcame the ghost of Belcora and saved Absalom and so on and so forth, and then sent them an invitation to come join her tournament. And could probably even just, you know, open a portal for them to step through and arrive in Tiansha, or to the port where the boat is leaving that arrives at the beginning of Book 1 at Danger Island. So I don't see connecting those as being a problem. The other question that sort of came up with that is how do I feel about this adventure path in comparison to Stolen Fate? Stolen Fate is the other level 11 to 20 adventure path that I have done an overview so far, and I would personally rank Stolen Fate as higher than Fist of the Ruby Phoenix. There were more sort of wow moments in that one for me, but that is by no means to say that Ruby Phoenix is a poor adventure path. I think there's challenges in it that I've already mentioned, but those challenges can be overcome with enough preparation. So overall, yeah, I think Fist of the Ruby Phoenix is a good adventure path. But yes, if someone was to ask me what would be my preference for picking up a level 11 to a 20 adventure path, right now I would say Stolen Fate. But I haven't read all the adventure paths, and there's still more being published every single month, so that could change. So that's it for my my more subjective look at Fist of the Ruby Phoenix. If you have anything you can add to that conversation, please let me know in the comments. If you've had experience, let me know. If you have encountered the same hurdles or different hurdles, let us know and how you overcame them. That's going to help everybody involved in wanting to run this adventure path. And as always, I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me in this channel, whether that's by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, buying a super thanks. I appreciate everything you folks do to support me. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.